Welcome, and thanks for listening to Intrinsic Investigations. My name is Mr. Olivo, and I created this podcast because I've been fortunate enough over the last decade to see unique and thought-provoking projects happen in my classroom, and we wanted a place to showcase them. The true heart of this podcast lies not in the content discovered, but in exploring the personal stories of these young researchers as they journey through uncharted and unfamiliar intellectual terrain. By sharing their stories, we hope to normalize the challenges and frustrations that come with independent research, and also share those moments where students transcend the normal grind of the school day to discover concepts that range from the global to deeply personal. We will begin with a brief introduction to the student of focus, why they picked their topic, and discuss their growth over the course of the last year. It should be mentioned that the opinions expressed in this podcast in no way reflect the opinions of our school district, Bergen County Technical Schools and Special Services, or our school itself, Bergen County Technical High School, Teterboro, or the College Board. The work detailed in this podcast was most likely completed in AP Capstone, but this podcast is in no way affiliated with the College Board. This is an extremely special episode. You could probably hear me smiling, but I have with me right now Kevin Cho, the first person ever interviewed for this podcast ever. Kevin, do you remember what your project was on your senior year of high school?
My project was on the marketing of firearms to audiences on podcasting platforms on Spotify. What I essentially did was I did a content analysis on what marketing themes are utilized by these podcasters to market firearms to the public, and how that kind of intersected with the issue of firearms in America from like a public health angle.
And now that you're at Rutgers University, we'll talk about where this paper is going to take you, but you just did a project on mad cows and neoliberalism, recontextualizing the 2008 candlelight protests in South Korea. What took you to this topic?
Yeah, so at school I have one of my professors, Dr. Gumrukchu. She's a specialist in comparative politics, specifically in the field of social movements in Turkey and how they relate to the anti-globalization, or how she terms it, the global justice movement.
Okay.
So after taking a class with her, I got interested in like that as in the South Korean context, because South Korea is a country that's so intertwined in neoliberalism and globalization, and the entire story of that country from the 1960s onward is one of globalization and how that makes fortunes for countries, but also how it affects the countries of the formerly developing world. So I started my search with what I first thought was the anti-globalization movement as existed in South Korea, and it turned out there were a couple social movements based on that, which kind of led to this paper, which intersects between the wider social movement against the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement at the time and the 2008 series of protests, which is distinct from a social movement, but it was a massive series of protests termed the Candlelight Movement in South Korea on fears around mad cow disease. But as it appears in my paper, there are a lot of other things.
There's something underlying beneath that mad cow disease component.
Absolutely.
And in reading your paper, I was in shock about how little I knew about any of this, considering, it's 2008, so I'm like, this is like probably, so I'm like 26 years old. I'm reading the news on a pretty regular basis, but I had no idea that in South Korea this was happening. I'm sure the American media at the time, if it's 2008, depending on I don't know if you know when this was in terms of proximity to the financial crisis, but I feel like the financial crisis was such a dominant headline that year that all the news I was consuming was primarily at the national level and nothing at the international level like this. So it was pretty eye-opening to read your work.
Yeah. The financial crisis, the intersection was really interesting because Korea had already had its financial crisis in the 90s. So, of course, the 2008 financial crisis in America affected Korean outcomes, but it really didn't pop up in my research as much as I thought it would.
Yeah. Were you familiar with this topic before you delved into it?
Absolutely not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So how did you settle on it?
Yeah, so it was just like the process of literature review, like what I did here. Like, at first boiled down to reading a lot of papers. I knew I wanted to do something on like an anti-globalization movement in Korea, which first led me to the course FTA movement, which was from 5 years, from like 2006 to like 2011. But that's too much. So I settled on the 2008 protests, which at first it was not really clear whether they were like a distinct like series of movements in the literature, but it turned out it was, and it's like it's a big deal in Korea. If you ask people like, where were you in 2008 during the protest, they actually have an answer for you.
Right.
So, and it also represented like a big rebirth of Korean civil society at the time after the democratization of the 80s. So it's a really interesting event in Korean history that I stumbled on in my literature review and that I chose to do research on for this paper.
Yeah, it was a really interesting read. What is your current major now at Rutgers?
I'm a double major in political science and economics, and I'm also minoring in critical intelligence studies, in Korean, and in global studies.
Wow. And this paper, I appreciate you sending me the email and keeping me up to date on your discoveries. So with this paper, you're going to South Korea in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, yes.
And are you like pushing this study in new directions, or what's the purpose of your you're studying abroad for a semester, right?
Yes.
So what are you going to be doing there?
So the reason why this research happened in the first place was because I learned about a scholarship opportunity offered through my school's Asian Languages and Cultures department. So what it boiled down to was the first thing that needed to happen was like a research presentation needed to be made for like the Korean Studies Conference that happened in UPenn on the 24th of April.
Yes.
So that was the first symposium I presented at. But
wait. Was that the first one you presented at since you were at Bergen Tech?
I believe so, yes.
Wow. So, okay. All right.
Yeah. And
how was that?
It wasn't a symposium like what you imagine, like the big auditorium with the presentation and everything. It was a very small, like conference room kind of affair with about, I think, 6 studies. So it was nowhere as big as I thought it was going to be. But what was great about it was a lot more like intimate of a setting where you get to know everybody. And I ended up meeting a couple postdocs there in political science and sociology that were able to help me a lot with this research that I'm currently in correspondence with.
Awesome. And then, so from that symposium, you're going to South Korea and you have a study abroad semester. Is it right?
It's the summer. It's like an 8-week program.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are you most hopeful for in those 8 weeks that you're there?
So the reason I got to go to this program over the summer was because I got a scholarship to go to this 8-week program through this research paper I wrote. And I'm presenting at another symposium there on July 11th at that Korean university with other students from the Big Ten universities that also received this scholarship. So what I'm most looking forward to there, well, first is to present my research, which is on clearly a very Korean topic. So I'm excited to see what I find. But also it's just nice going back to Korea.
I'm sure.
The subway system, walkable infrastructure, everything there. So
I don't know what you're talking about. No, I was just in New York this weekend. There's a walkable system there, and the subway is functional.
And they're closing off the avenues to let people walk through. So
I've become very anti-car this year. The students have seen it. I ride my bike to work sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, on 46?
No, I have a way. It still raises my cortisol and adrenaline levels in not a good way every morning. But I feel like we could just stop with the cars for a little bit, just a little bit. But that's a little bit tangential. I want to shift this conversation a bit because I think you're really the first person for us to have back here to have an in-depth conversation about how is college research different from the research that you did here. Usually when people reach out to me who are former students, it's usually in like the first couple of years, and none of them have really had the opportunities to do research like you did. Sometimes that happens like sophomore year or junior year, like later in the year. And then by that point, and no fault of their own, it's like people usually aren't writing back to their high school teachers to be like, yo, check us out. Thank you so much. So I appreciate you coming in. I guess my big question for you is, how different is college level research than the research you did here in the AP capstone program?
So I've boiled it down to like two main differences,
Okay.
which was the first one was the time crunch. So I essentially had to like throw this study together in about 13 weeks. I had like
wow.
3 months-ish to throw this together from when I got the news that you're presenting at the symposium in April. And the second difference that I would catalog is like the level of support that was provided, which was a lot less than it was in this program. I mean, I had professors on call, but it wasn't like we're going to walk you through this literature review. It was more just like you have a deadline, meet it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the time crunch part, I think the 13 weeks thing is a little misleading because first off, I'm only spending 20 hours or so a week in class compared to I think about 35 here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 41-minute periods. Like, yeah.
So like if it's like 8 to 3, that's like 7 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So I'm spending a lot less time in class. I have a lot more free time to work on this project outside of school.
Yeah.
But the time crunch was still real. It's still only 3 months to put together a project, and there isn't much support provided in the way of I needed annotated bibliography by February 20th or whenever
Right.
it was. So what I noticed was that my work had to become a lot more habitual and like autonomous, and I had to get a lot more serious about how I like planned out my days to how I could complete this project. So at the beginning, when I was just figuring out what was going on, my biggest priority was like read as much as possible. So
You're just trying to consume as much information as you can.
Yeah. So what I did was like from 9 to 11 every night, I'd read like 1 or 2 research papers like every night, like including weekends. And then later on when it got more serious, when I had to actually do writing, when I had to like figure out the method, I had to set my own deadline on when to get the method together so I could do the analysis over spring break.
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening was that Sunday became my like research day. That was the day I would like focus completely to research, meaning I'd have to like front load all my work to Saturdays. So the time crunch, it was real, but first of all, the 13 weeks is a little misleading. And the second thing was that the work, like I had to portion it out. This wasn't something I could just like crunch into like one day.
Yeah, definitely not. And you're raising an interesting point here, which is you have to have a certain level, it seems like a certain level of academic maturity to be able to do undergraduate research or just independent research in general. I'll even say it at the high school level, because I definitely see students who, and like I'm not throw shade on anyone who's in the audience right now, but there are definitely students who can get by in AP research with a topic that they don't particularly love, with multiple cans of Celsius a day, and then like push off a large amount of it until the end and try to like cram as much as possible, just because, I don't know, like you're in high school and you've never really been faced with such a task before. So to your point of like, like one thing, setting like annotated bibliography due dates or like prep reflection questions, it's almost like for you, it seems like that has to be baked into your process to get the best possible work. And there's no one checking to make sure that you did it. Other than at the end, like the end product for sure, to make sure it makes sense. Is that an accurate reflection of what you're saying or not? Yeah,
I'd say so. Because like the way the deadlines work was like hugely inconsistent. Because this kind of goes into my other point about like the professor's level of support. We had a designated faculty advisor for this, but first of all, he's not a subject matter expert in political economy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
He's Asian studies, so he's a lot more into like the spatial analysis kind of that kind of field. And the thing is, he's busy with so much else. Like he really can't afford to just be there, like Zoom call every week, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which that's a very unique experience for most research projects. Like there will be a professor to meet with, like at least bi-weekly, like at least once a month. But the deadlines kind of reflected this, and that we had like 2 deadlines in February. We had like the updated abstract from the one we had to submit to get this opportunity.
So like start it,
Yeah, and then we had the annotated bibliography at the end of the month.
Okay.
And then March was just free for all. Like you could work on this as much or as little as you wanted to, over break, not over break. And then it was just like get it done by April 10th.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And then
do you feel like taking research in high school prepared you for that get it ready by April 10th?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I really wanted to emphasize to the audience while I'm here, this is a very unique skill set you guys got. Like very few people actually get to go through the experience of like fermenting a research question, coming up with your method, coming up with how to operationalize concepts. Very few people know how to do this. Like the standard of research I saw at the symposium, like you could see it was there, but AP research really did prepare me to conduct a study in a way that I really don't think many other people get. So your research skills are a very unique opportunity that you've been given and that you should pursue more when you get to college, which we'll cover more in a bit here, I'm sure.
Yeah. If anything, because this is what just selfishly, I'm curious about this. If I should change anything about this class, what should I change?
It's been 2 years since I went through it.
Yeah, I know. But if there's anything that sticks out, like, and again, you don't have to say like, I would change this one thing. You don't have to have an answer to this question. But I'm always curious because I value the perspective of students who go on to college. And this happens to me with bio students sometimes where they're like, the way that you taught me bio, they're like, it made me love biology. But they're like, but it didn't help me with more like standardized, like memorization kind of bio classes, like an intro 100 bio course. They're like, I found it so irritating. And I was like, that's kind of like a backhanded compliment in a way, because it's like I'm not preparing you for college in the assessment portion, but I am fostering a love of the material. So I don't know if there's anything you've got for me where you're like, yeah, you know what? Do more of this or do less of this. Like, let me know.
One thing I remember from seminar, I believe it was claim evidence reasoning.
Yeah,
those. I remember I hated those when I was here. Like
a lot of people do
because they're really tedious.
Yeah, like you all hate them, right? Yeah,
CERs.
yeah. Oh my, yeah. Look at these people nodding in agreement, and one of them's about to go to Princeton. He's nodding in agreement.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, but no one knows who you are. Don't worry about it. All right, but yeah, claim evidence reasoning. Hating those at the time, but
I hated those, but it does give you more of an idea of how academic writing is supposed to go, like how you prove a point, claim evidence reasoning, which I'm not saying I followed it for this paper, but it's certainly
I could see
like
it there. I could see it's not so formulaic at this point. You've kind of internalized it, and it comes out in your writing, but it's not like, here's my claim, here's my evidence, here's my reasoning. I gotcha.
Yeah, and what I remember from research as opposed to seminar was it being a lot more independent, hands-off, just give people a deadline, show them how to do the thing, and just like let them have at it.
Yeah.
Which I think worked out, frankly. Like I think less is more when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Just show them how to do it and just like let them go for it. And I would say a lot more of it should be like the process of feedback of like once they submit a method section, I would say like integrate more space for feedback in those spaces rather than like spending more time trying to teach them the concept of how to create a method section, because methods is such a diverse thing depending on what you're studying. So I think a lot more of the work should happen at the end of the process once they already have their method section than at the beginning when they're trying to conceptualize like how a method section is supposed to go.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I feel like in the last 2 years, I've definitely cut a lot of the stuff from the beginning of the year to try to rush them. Not too much, but to get them thinking about the method earlier in the year. So like by October, November, you're already familiar with a few different types of options for methods, because methods are the thing that is most, unless it's science, because of the scientific method in like middle school and even elementary school, especially when applied to fields like yours or like in historical contexts, those types of skills in terms of like original research that can be, yield operationalized original data, that is not something that is taught to high school students. And they kind of get thrown in just right away, where it's like, okay, you want to do like some kind of historical hermeneutical research on with newspapers from the last 70 years. It's like, there is a process to do that. So go out and do it. And you got to fail and you got to learn from your mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had people at the symposium who were doing methods that we did here. Like one of our presenters did a survey on like cultural appropriation and how that applies to K-pop and like Korean people's like attitudes and like what constitutes cultural appropriation or appreciation when it comes to K-pop.
Yeah, I'm listening. It's just funny that you mentioned that, because the last episode we just did was about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was about black cultural appropriation in K-pop.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely big, but the point I'm trying to get at is that it's not unique to students that have gone through AP research that they know methods like this. Like she clearly was able to figure it out. But I will say that my time in AP research did give me a lot more familiarity with content analysis specifically, which I was able to expand out into the more specific methodology of protest event analysis, which I use for the study, which is very similar to content analysis in a lot of ways, but is different in the focus on like one single protest event that happened like there at that time on this date. Like
and your content analysis at the high school level with the implicit firearms marketing, I remember, like you reached out to a professor at Drew University who, and I think you wanted to like drive there in a wild rainstorm, and I was like, please don't do that.
I remember that.
It was like so badass. I was like, please wait until it dries up out there. But yeah, like so it's cool to see that like you're applying a slightly different method, but that same level of like analytical rigor and attention to detail is there, which I'm going to be honest with you, I just don't know. Even as a parent, as a parent and as an educator, I don't know that schools do enough early on to really teach kids to pay attention to detail. It's usually about like executing. I think schools are great about task execution. Like, all right, you got to solve this set of problems. This is the way you solve the problems. Please follow these directions. Boom, you're done. But because all of that has been laid out for them, they don't have to be critical about how they're approaching anything. They just have to get it done. You know, and I think that with all the curveballs thrown by research, the students who really shine and demonstrate that level of academic maturity that we were talking about are the ones that can pay close attention and like have that intrinsic drive to really discover. But that's at the same time, those two things are almost like skills that you have to hone. Like it takes practice to know what you care about, and self-reflection is a skill in and of itself.
Yeah. I will say one thing that got to college was I still didn't have the task execution thing down.
It's okay. I don't think most humans do.
Yeah, but for the first 3 semesters, I noticed like how overwhelmed I was getting with a lot of the courses I was taking. I was missing like entire quizzes that are supposed to be taken on Canvas that I just wouldn't do because like I forgot to do them, which is like insane coming from somebody who's gone through 12 years of you need to do this quiz by this date.
Yeah.
But sorry, that is something that happened. I actually brought a couple of the papers, the printed newspaper articles that I went through as part of my content analysis. They still have the highlighting all the keys still on them.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to distribute these to the audience, they are in Korean, but I think the point kind of goes through.
Yeah, this is great because this looks exactly like how we say annotations are supposed to look.
Oh, really?
You want to check these out? I'm going to pass them around the crowd. Yeah, that's very funny. Those are the art of annotation. I just found out my 7th grader doesn't know how to take notes, and I was like, what do you mean? But also at the same time, he doesn't want to hear it from me because I'm his dad. Like your dad teaching you how to take notes is just, even as a dad, I'll say it's the lamest thing ever. But yeah, I got a question from the audience if you're willing to take one.
Sure.
All right. How do you think the skills you've gained through your research translated or will translate into your professional experience? So it's a little more forward-facing, but like, what do you want to do with this?
Yeah, forward-facing. So my long-term goals aren't set in stone yet, but it evidently has something to do with political economy, and especially in the more international scene, as related to like East Asia, hence my Korean minor, or the intelligence community, because critical intelligence, which is a very strong program at Rutgers. So I believe in the humanities, a lot of the skills are pretty transferable between like a lot of different fields. The skills of like note taking, of qualitative analysis, of operationalization, turning like insanely.
I hate saying that word, but yes, you got it.
Yeah.
Operationalization.
Taking like insanely complicated things like the 2008 candlelight movement and turning them into data that can actually be analyzed. eventually regression analysis. Like I just finished.
Okay, cool.
I just finished a class on econometrics. There's a lot you can do with the basic skills that you learn here, and I think a lot of AP research teaches you is like a mode of thought, especially in the more qualitative areas, which is, from what I've seen, a lot more of what we focus on here. I think it just prepares you really well for the humanities. Not even if you don't go into academia, even if you'd never do another scholarly research paper again. I think just like the way of thinking, the focus on note taking, annotation, all of these things are really like fundamental skills that are great to develop early on, and I guess the interest from which will compound over time.
Yes, you would hope so. Well, it's like building any skill. It just a little bit of improvement over time yields big gains, just like compounding interest.
Yeah.
How do you? So here's another question from the audience. This student is currently singing right now. I'll just read it while I'm over here. But there's a chorus rehearsal for the audience who's like, why are they singing? How do you get research opportunities? So how did you come across what you're doing right now? Was it just in the coursework, or did you have to look for this in like the Department of Asian Studies? Like, how did you do that?
So yeah, undergraduate research opportunities, they are few and far between, but once you're in, you're in. Like, the way I found this opportunity specifically to present at UPenn and to compete for the scholarship to Yonsei this summer was my friends like shared, like he sent me like when you send like an Instagram reel, like he sent me that, but like it was my professor's Instagram post on this opportunity, and there were like, I think it was like a week before it was due, and I just had to throw together an abstract like in that period of time. But once you're into undergraduate research and you have a study completed, like there are other opportunities around. Like through the study abroad opportunity, I have a research internship with the AI and politics or AI and political polarization program at Yonsei with Professor Kim Young-chan, who's like an established name in the field. And then from there, I have a CV together. I have like 5 items on my CV. So I can take that and I can use it to apply to things like the Oresti Research Center at Rutgers, which is another big like undergraduate research opportunity. That one's an entire year. I've applied to two projects with that one. And then I can also just use a CV to apply for other research opportunities here and there. Like the Rutgers Democracy Lab, there's a Think and Do tank, which is...
I have never heard that term before. A think and do tank.
Yeah, so the way it works, it's another year-long program with the stipend and everything. But from what I understand, like the first semester of the program is like doing research on an issue, like operationalizing concepts, figuring out like a set of recommendations, policy recommendations about this issue. And the second semester is like putting those into action.
Oh,
like
that makes sense.
Hence think and do. So that's another opportunity that's, I believe I have a pretty strong application for with this research experience. So what I will say is that research isn't, you need to look for research opportunities. Like my entire freshman year, I had no idea any of these opportunities were a thing. But once you, through the workings of Princess Celestia, I figured out an opportunity, and it just compounds over time, especially with my AP research experience now having done this paper. Again, it's a very unique skill set and one that opportunities just like pop up over time.
That's what it's interesting that you say that, because just students who have graduated and moved on, when they reach out to me, they're like, yeah, if they get research opportunities in the first couple of years, like yourself, like your second year of college, it's usually they are like kind of chatting with a professor and they're talking like, oh, in high school I did something similar to what you're doing, but I did it like this, and like the professor's just like, what? Like you've already run, like a former student, like she did an observational study in a nursing home focused on Alzheimer's, and one of her professors her first year of college was like how did you do that? And then she talked about the IRB process, and he just was like, I didn't realize people did that at a high school level. He goes, you might be interested in, and now she's engaging in research, and she's the only first year student engaging in the research with this Alzheimer's lab.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to people and let them know what you've already interested in, what you've already done.
Yeah. And again, this is a really unique thing, which is why you get you might be interested in. This isn't like, I had an internship with my local congressman, which is still important, but research is a lot more unique of an experience. So to the audience, I know you guys don't get AP credit for this. Nobody gives you AP credit for AP research or AP seminar. But
or
again,
if they do, we don't know.
If they do, I've never heard of it. Please tell me. But it's a very unique skill set you're building that they'll help you a lot in college, whether you know it or not, through either if you get credit for it somehow, or just extracurriculars, getting research opportunities, the boost to the resume you get early on alongside your senior internship. That sets you pretty well for college, as long as you talk to people, as long as you do your due diligence of looking for opportunities when they arise. And I guess I could get into the second bit of advice that I have for today.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, give him advice.
Yeah. So my best advice for college and for life in general is to apply for everything. It's so much better to just regret applying for something and just cancel on somebody than to like regret not having applied in the first place and you have that whataboutism going through your head. For instance, there's this fellowship at Rutgers, the Gardner Fellowship, which only sophomores, like in my position, can apply to. And I realized I missed the deadline 3 weeks after it passed. And I still think about that. So the first thing I say, it doesn't matter how degree related, how, frankly, what the time commitment looks like. You can think about this so many times, but like you can think about it all after you've already gotten in and you have the choice of whether to pursue this opportunity or not, rather than whether to apply or not. And as part of that, I suppose, I guess this is where we start talking about artificial intelligence.
I had a feeling this was going to go in that direction.
Like everything else.
I didn't want to push it in that direction, but I am more than willing to talk about it. So let's talk about AI.
We'll keep it brief.
I don't know that we should. Like I'll get into my feelings about it. But yeah, go into your segue of AI and
So none of this paper is AI. I want to make that clear from the beginning. I never used AI to be like, hey, write my literature review for me. Like, you don't do that unless we're talking about a job search. In a job search, AI is your best friend. Utilize ChatGPT for everything, because like if you look at my LinkedIn right now, like most of it is ChatGPT or ChatGPT adjacent. And if you look at like all the cover letters, all the essays I've sent, I used AI pretty heavily in like figuring out what I was going to write, because it genuinely is just so much better at selling you than you are at just like thinking about essays. Like you guys have already been through the college process. Like how many did you apply to?
Oh,
you're juniors?
Everyone here is a junior except for that one.
21. Oh, that's pretty. I think that's how many I applied to. But yeah, like you know how many essays
number.
You know how many essays you had to write for that, and how important those essays theoretically are to like your college admissions. So I'd say utilize AI to like figure out your line of reasoning, which is another thing we learn about in research. But utilize AI to figure out what you're going to write and to speed up your application process and take the time commitment of application down to a minimum. Because again, apply for everything. And if that application takes only 2 hours, that's a lot less of a risk than if an application takes a week to workshop and write together.
And on some level, like my approach with AI is like if there's something that is mechanical about what I am doing, then I'm going to use AI. But if there's something where I need to be truly present as a human being, I'm doing that. Like I'm writing that letter of recommendation, or I'm, brainstorm. Like, I like brainstorming with people. I don't like brainstorming with machines. Like I'd rather have a conversation, and even if that conversation meanders and is a little bit messy, I just feel like the ideas that come out of it are so much better than being directed by a machine and being like, hey, give me like 5 things that I can do right now to like, I don't know. Like, you know what I'm saying though?
Yeah,
like,
it's very like vanilla advice that it gives a lot of the time. But
totally.
Yeah, for essays, cover letters, like the number of times before I discovered ChatGPT, before I did that, the number of times I was sitting there like agonizing for like an hour, like I don't think I have any relevant experience here. Like the amount of time AI cuts out of the application process is frankly insane.
Yeah.
So
you could do other things like discover things about South Korean protests.
Of course,
and then travel the world because of that.
And again, apply to everything.
Yeah. Here's a question from one of our sophomores. When you're initially learning about a certain research topic of interest, what parts of that topic do you learn about first? Example, like the history of it? Like how did you approach like the beginning of this process?
Yeah, again, my literature review process was a lot more quantity over quality.
Okay.
So my approach to it was I was going to read up on whatever I could find about anti-globalization movements until I found something that I was interested in. So that's kind of what happened. Like I found,
and you just knew it was like love at first read. Like you read it and you're like, that's the thing. It might be as simple as that. I don't know. What do you attribute it to?
Yeah, so I first found this paper by a professor, Shin-A Hong, which is like a neo-Gramscian analysis of the anti-Chorus FTA protests, the anti-Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement protests from 2006 to 2011, where he had identified like 3 key frameworks that he believed like described like what went on at the protest, which from memory were neoliberalism as the problem, public accountability, and national independence. But
that sounds like a guy who didn't outsource the reading of the paper to AI.
Yeah. And then I also read my professor's master's thesis, which, if I could digress for a second, one of the best decisions I made when I figured out like what I was going to do for my research was I wanted to make this something with my professor of comparative politics, Professor Gamukchu, that I had taken classes with, and I was really interested in her work. So I went through her CV, I read her master's thesis, which was on her using a newspaper analysis, a protest, which is where I got introduced to protest event analysis, and also some semi-structured interviews to catalog, like, it wasn't exactly the causes, but it was like movement diffusion, like how the anti-globalization movement spread from like other parts of Europe to Turkey through methodology. With the specific example she cited was like the method of using lemon juice to like mitigate the effects of tear gas. That wasn't like a Turkish invention. They got that from elsewhere, which she discovered through these interviews and through analyzing articles from a Turkish newspaper.
I didn't even know that was a thing. So you've diffused it into me now.
There you go.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was from that paper that a lot of my literature review kind of emanated, because I knew I wanted to do something protest event analysis related. Except on the Korean context of anti-globe.
Kevin, I know that's something you haven't heard in a long time, but that's the bell.
Yeah.
So we're going to pause real quick, and then we're going to finish the recording.
Mm-hmm.
And we are back, but the classes have changed. All right, we were about to get into AI, but before I do that, I do have one more question for you from the group. Have you? A student was asking, I saw your AP research paper and codes for the content analysis. Did you do a similar process while you were, I guess, applied to your college paper?
So she saw my high school paper.
Yeah.
So I think they were very similar processes of coding, where I kind of ripped the codes out of another paper that was around before my time. Mm-hmm. And then I iterated on that through a more conventional approach to content analysis. So if I'm remembering correctly, that is a hybrid approach to I forget.
Is that the directed, or is that like directed is like you have it's summative.
Summative.
Yeah, because
I
you have
think
some
summative.
keywords and then you add as you explore.
Yeah. So both of them were summative content analysis, which I had more confidence in doing because I did a very similar process for my firearms research, where I took, I believe it was Dr. Jenna Dretton's codes for her analysis on YouTube videos and how firearms are marketed in those. And I ripped the code book out and I applied them to podcasts with a little more literature review on how podcasts specifically market largely through the credibility of the host with the audience and the parasocial relationships that emerge from that.
Yeah, like Joe Rogan's going to sell me my brain pills.
Exactly.
Because he cares about my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should insert some paid ads here, but I have no sponsors. We have a bunch of ninth graders in the room now because the class switched over and they're in intro to research. They're about to do content analyses. You got any suggestions for them as they're developing codes? Like, should they? My take, and I don't know if they're going to listen to me, but I hope they do, is to do what you're describing, like have some kind of direction first derived from your sources, use that deductive angle of having a theoretical approach, but be open to seeing things that deviate and then capture those deviations. I feel like for a ninth grader, that's probably the way to start because they may not know enough to explore within bounds, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I completely agree. Like, even not just for ninth graders, for anybody, like, I feel like that summative content analysis should be how you're handling coding. Not just because it's easier, but also because a lot of the criticism around content analysis is that, like, what does this add to the literature? You read a paper and you coded a couple things, you like highlighted them. It's not the most like technically challenging like work of research compared to something like regression analysis or anything AP Bio is doing.
Right.
But summative content analysis is a great way to like better integrate your paper into the existing literature. That's about it. Yeah, just better integrate it into the existing literature. Plus, it makes coding a lot easier to integrate both into what you got in your literature review and the analysis that you end up doing and putting into your results section as well.
We only have a few minutes left, and you brought up AI, and I feel like the specter of it in the land of academia and research is looming quite large. Mm-hmm. So I'm holding your paper right now, Mad Cows and Neoliberalism, Recontextualizing the 2008 Candlelight Protests. What would you say to somebody who almost like excitedly would be like, well, I can use deep research and make that paper that took you weeks to write, I could do it in 5 minutes. How would you respond to that kind of assertion?
With an exhausted look in my eye.
Yeah.
But, yeah, well, the first thing I'd have to note is that AI doesn't think for its own. It's a large language model. It just takes like what's already out there and summarizes it in a nice, clean, polished way with hallucinations, which is a big deal when you're talking about research.
I would just say mistakes. Could you imagine if you said, like, if a teacher said to you, "Oh, it seems like you made a mistake on your paper." Like, no, I was just hallucinating. Like, there'd be issues. So they make mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say AI works really well when it's applied to like the Gemini kind of way, where it's just like summarize a Google search, which has a lot of ramifications for hurting like traffic to a lot of these sites. Mm-hmm. But what I would say for AI in the research context specifically is that the point of research is that you're discovering something new. And the way that AI is currently laid out as being a large language model, it really doesn't do that. It's just summarizing what's already out there with the nice, clean, polished, hopefully mistake-free veneer that you're putting over it. Also,
discovery is a very human activity, it seems. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And so much of research, like there's a lot of love that you have to put into a project like this. Like, mm-hmm. It doesn't just appear because, I have to.
I would hope not. That'd be you could do a lot less, and probably be fine.
Yeah. So I had postdocs coming out to me after the symposium like, it's pretty clear you've put love into this paper. Exactly. Like, there's a lot here.
How does it feel to hear that?
It was eye-opening because so much of this paper was like, I started this paper being like, I've done this from AP research. I could throw this together in 13 weeks. But yeah, that's just not something that AI, like, it doesn't come through an AI like that. Like, I talk to so many of because I'm humanities, I talk to so many of my professors who are so sick because they just know, like, when it's AI, like, there's something human about it that AI can't replicate just yet. So as unqualified of an observer as I am on the subject, I support using AI within bounds so long as utilized as assistance for the methods or for other tasks like writing a cover letter, for example. But I absolutely do not support the use of AI when it comes to directly writing your paper. Maybe in the search for papers for your literature review, I actually did do that on a couple occasions. Find me papers on this specific topic. I tried that, which worked every now and again. It doesn't get you access to the databases, obviously. But
that's true. Yeah, I think what you're describing right there, like giving almost like a very rich, individualized prompt for searching for papers can be extremely helpful. I tell students to do that, and there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah.
Because to your point, you're not outsourcing the skill or the knowledge to the machine. Like, you're still employing the skills of the researcher, and you're still drawing the conclusions as the human being you're almost like the director or the architect of the project. And sure, the AI can be doing some of the grunt work, but it shouldn't be running the show.
Yes.
And replacing the person involved.
Absolutely. It's absolutely not there yet. And I think a lot of the dialogue about AGI is very premature at present.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come and visit a windowless school on the side of a highway. At Rutgers you got windows?
It depends where you are.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Colleges can sometimes have windowless rooms, but yeah, New Brunswick's treating you well though.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Coming back, it's funny how little has changed from when I was in. Like, I see everyone has the same iPads. The bell tone's still the same.
Yeah, it's same.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah, we're just orbiting this planet. We're just orbiting this building, and the teachers here are on a time loop. So, but yes, very little has changed. But we miss you, and thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
All right, take care.
Right.